tempted every day, knowing not the secrets of tomorrow. We find refuge when we watch and pray. Keep your eyes on Jesus when the tidal waves of trouble around you roll. Keep your eyes on Jesus. He will calm the storms of life that toss your soul. Traveling upon the raging billows, sinking neath the load of doubt and fear, crushed by broken hopes and disappointments. Weary one, look up, do not despair. Keep your eyes on Jesus when the tidal waves of trouble around you roll. Keep your eyes on Jesus. He will calm the storms of life that toss your soul. When at last you're nearing heaven's shoreline, and the fearful breakers round you roar, may you hear the master pilot whisper, fear not, I will take you safely home. Keep your eyes on Jesus when the tidal waves of trouble around you roll. Keep your eyes on Jesus. He will calm the storms of life that toss your soul. Howdy folks, and a great big welcome to each and every one of you. Well, that song that I just sang and played was composed by Ira Leuven sometime in the 60s, I guess. He and his brother Charlie made up the famous Leuven brothers. They sang gospel tunes and old-timey tunes and a few bluegrass tunes. Ira played mandolin and Charlie played the guitar. They made a lot of records. They broke up in 1963 because Charlie couldn't take his brother's violent fits of anger anymore. Ira had a big problem with alcoholism, and I don't know how he would be able to write a song like that. The song's a great song, but for some reason he never put his trust into what he was writing about. At any rate, Ira, I think he had 4 wives, and then sometime in, I think it was 1965, he and his 4th wife were driving along, and they got hit by another drunk driver, and it killed them both. And meanwhile, the police were looking for Ira because they wanted to arrest him for driving drunk. So, sad story, but great song, great gospel song. What I'd like to do now is a little Bible reading. So for those of you folks who don't want to hear a Bible reading, now's the time to end the video. I'll say adios. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time. For those of you who are hanging on, I found a couple of stories in the Bible that relate directly to this song that I just sang, Storms of Life. Uh, First one comes from Matthew chapter 14, and verse 22. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get in the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side of the Lake of Galilee, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," Jesus said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed back into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." So that's one story about putting your faith in Jesus. And just a few pages back, uh, Matthew chapter 8, verse 23. There's another story about storms on the Sea of Galilee. Okay, so Matthew chapter 8, verse 23. Then he got into the boat, and his disciples followed him. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." He replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Now, this must have been quite the storm, because you got to remember that Peter and James and John were experienced fishermen. They had made a living catching fish on Galilee, but here they are afraid of the huge storm. And if they were afraid of the storm, it must have been a dandy of a storm. So Jesus spoke of Jesus told a parable just one chapter back. Uh, this has got nothing to do with storms on the ocean. Chapter 7, verse 24. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. That's the solution to weathering all of the storms of life that human beings nowadays suffer. Uh, Disappointments, uh, hopes that weren't fulfilled, anger, resentment, bitterness, envy. How do you survive those storms? Well, the answer is always the same. You put your trust in Jesus and become one of his disciples. And if you build your house on that rock, it'll never fall down in the storms of life. So, great lessons learned from the stories in the Bible. Don't fear things that are happening to you now. Just put your trust in Jesus, and you can be guaranteed that he will take care of you. So thanks a lot for listening to the song. Thanks for listening to the Bible reading. God bless, and we'll see you down the road.